Hello, everyone. My name is Debbie Harwell. I teach history and public history in the History Department and the Honors College at the University of Houston. I also serve as the editor of Houston History Magazine, which is a publication we produce in the Center for Public History twice a year. Today, I want to talk about the Resilient Houston Documenting Hurricane Harvey project and how we incorporated oral history into our classes to record neighborhood narratives, to document the storm, and then we used both digital and print media in order to report our findings. The main focus of this presentation demonstrates the type of project that can be done with either a graduate or an undergraduate class in oral history over the course of a single semester. It also gives you ideas of how you might use that material in other classes if you choose to do so. Now, although Houston is prone to flooding, Hurricane Harvey was a storm that literally was of historic proportions. Almost every Houstonian was affected either directly or indirectly by its damage. Those of us at the UH Center for Public History who frequently work with oral histories realized immediately the importance of oral history as a tool to tell the stories of people who are frequently left out of the historical record and overlooked, so that we could shed light on the overall impact of the storm that went beyond just its statistics. And thus, the Resilient Houston Documenting Hurricane Harvey project was born. Three of us taught classes related to Hurricane Harvey: Dr. Mark Goldberg, Dr. Todd Romero, and me. The class I designed, called Voices from the Storm, used oral history combined with a digital story map to tell these neighborhood narratives. I taught the class in the fall of 2018 and 2019. It took a multidisciplinary approach, taking into account history, science, policy, mental health, and public health factors that pertain to not only Harvey, but to other storms as well, and how those storms impact the community. It was an experiential learning opportunity for our students. So, of course, going out and doing the oral histories, talking with people, gave them experience as public historians, but also we included guest speakers from organizations like the Harris County Flood Control District, the Houston Fire Department Emergency Medical Services. We also had a geologist who studied causes of flooding and a mental health counselor. The class began by studying Houston's storm history so that they could understand the context when they were writing their oral history questions. And this was not Houston's first flood by any stretch. In fact, we have had over 180 floods since our incorporation. 36 of those occurred in the first 100 years, and that included the 1929 and 1935 floods that resulted in construction of the Barker and Addicks reservoirs. In the 83 years since that time, we have had another 146 floods, and these include the record-breaking floods in years 2015, 2016, and 2017, which saw many people flooded in 3 straight years. Here, we also looked at rates of development and the impact development had on environment and future flooding. We saw that both rich and poor neighborhoods suffered as a result of poor planning and a lack of flood control development. But we also saw that recovery was not equal based on your neighborhood or your demographics. And there are several reasons for that. Part of it is infrastructure, part of it is policy. Part of it was also whether or not people had flood insurance. In the second month, we turned our attention to oral history methods. We looked at the pluses and minuses of using oral history as a way to augment the historical record and create the historical record. We looked at issues of memory as well as recording methods, particularly the use of audio versus video recording. Most of ours were done with video, but not all of them. And so after we had spent some time with that, did some role playing, our students jumped into interviewing. They did some one-on-one interviews, and we also did a few group interviews. We also set up oral history harvests. And this is where we went into the community. We advertised that we would be there, and people came to us to tell us their stories. The harvests offered a completely different type of environment than the one-on-one interviews because it's sort of like cold calling. We didn't know who was going to come and see us. We didn't know what their stories were going to be. So we had to develop questions on the fly. We came prepared, as you can see with the folder in the photograph on the right, with a list of very basic questions depending on what the person's role might be. So we had some jump-off questions for hurricane survivors, for volunteers, and for responders, whether they were first responders or civilian responders. And this gave the students sort of a place that they could feel comfortable with beginning the interviews. In 2018, we had harvests at the Kingwood Community Center as well as the Smith Library in the 3rd Ward, which the African American Library at the Gregory School coordinated with us. In 2019, we did additional harvests. This particular photograph was taken at the Wallop Senior Center in 3rd Ward. We also had one at St. Mary of the Purification Catholic Church in 3rd Ward, and in 5th Ward, the Lions Unity Missionary Baptist Church and the Multi-Service Center. So we branched out to multiple places within the community. Once we completed our interviews, the final step, in which we conducted in the last 3 to 4 weeks of class, was to create short films for each of our interviews that my students conducted and place those on the story mapping website. So our first tool for that was this template, which is something akin to a cross between an abstract and a storyboard. So it tells who all's being interviewed, who did the interview, when and where, and then the student was to write a paragraph or 2-paragraph introduction to the interview that would appear on the website. So some of this was bio information about the interviewee, and some of it was summary about their experience. Then they filled in to the chart the time range for the clips that they wanted to pull, the topic of each clip, which would be used on the website, and then they transcribed just those clips, not the entire interview, but those clips that were going to appear on the website. If the interviewee gave them any photos or videos and whatnot, then we included that in this chart as well. We then met in my office for that last few weeks. We worked together as a group. Some students finished faster than others, and so they were able to help their classmates with some of the pieces that they needed to finish up. And of course, the whole time we're there in sort of almost a computer lab kind of environment in my office where they could bounce ideas off of one another and get suggestions. And then finally, they made comments or production notes. For the website that we created for the Resilient Houston Documenting Hurricane Harvey website, we first started with a landing page for the University of Houston's College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. And so this describes very briefly our project. And then when you click on Visit Our Website, it redirects you to the site that we use creating the Esri template story map, which was a narrative story map. And then we also used their ArcGIS platform to create our interview map. So we have 3 tabs here. The About tab gives people an opportunity to learn about our project. And then the Harvey interview map is an interactive map where a person can click on the different points and get a little summary of what that interview is about. We color-coded them blue for storm survivors, green for volunteers, and red for first responders. And you'll notice we have clusters where we did our oral history harvest. You can also add additional material to these descriptions. For example, you could put a photograph or a link. Eventually, we will add links to the full interview in special collections at the University of Houston. You can also move the map around if you want to zero in on a particular area or something like that. The Voices from the Storm tab also includes the map as the opening piece. So it's right there. And then this explains how the site works a little bit. And then a person can scroll down for the individual interviewees. They could go just scrolling down the whole list, or they could hover over these names over here. They're all listed alphabetically by last name, and there are groups of the first 14, and then the next first 15, and the next 15, and the following 15. For each one of these, this follows the template that I showed you. So this would be that subtitle. This would be the transcription for the particular clip. I'm going to scroll down here to the last set of interviews, and I want to show you this one from Jane Long. This interview was done by my student Bernice Chow, and I particularly like this example because Bernice incorporated the one-on-one interview that she conducted with Jane. It also integrates still photographs that she placed in the video, as well as some Snapchat video that Jane took during her rescue. So, and it happens to be this very first clip that we're going to listen to, Story of Persistent Rescuers.
I thought it was pretty funny I thought it was interesting seeing the streets as we were in the boat, because that's not normal, right? Being on a boat in the streets. So we passed by cars that were just abandoned with the water all the way up to halfway up the window. The fences were like knocked down, and I had never seen anything like that. And it was interesting because my friend evacuated the day before, and when I was Snapchatting and she saw my video, she said, "Hey, wait, that's the same guy that evacuated me yesterday." So it was pretty cool seeing that the same guys were staying around and helping out, and really helping out the community in any way they could, even though I think they were from Dallas, actually. So they were really helpful, and it was pretty interesting to see that they had helped from down the street all the way to where I was.
Now, if someone wanted to listen to another part of Jane's interview, but perhaps they wanted to skip this second clip on the flood comes in and the lawsuit is filed, and they wanted to just skip over to the loss or House of Thanksgiving, we've included these time codes so that you could just scroll over to the particular one that you wanted. So say you wanted to hear the clip on the loss, you could come right over here to that place and the time code, hit play, and it would direct you to that part of the clip. The important thing to keep in mind is that in the course of one semester in an undergraduate class, we were able to teach ourselves a bit about the history, something about oral history methods, conduct oral histories, learn to edit these videos, and place this in the story map format, and all in the course of a single semester. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the editor of Houston History Magazine, which we publish in the Center for Public History at U of H. And doing a magazine on Harvey was always part of our vision for the Resilient Houston project. In the fall of this past year, I did the Voices from the Storm class, and then I followed that up in the spring semester with a class on writing and editing for a history magazine. And here the students took these oral histories, the 90 plus oral histories that we had collected. We divided them up. Everyone read through. We discussed topics that we felt like were important. We developed themes around these oral histories and determined that there were 15 articles that we wanted to include. There were 13 student authors who wrote those pieces. They do encompass additional outside research as well as the oral histories, and they quote directly over 50 of the individuals who took part in the project. The magazine will come out this fall. I hope that you will visit our website, houstonhistorymagazine.org, and take a look at it. And then here's also the website for the Resilient Houston project. We were very fortunate to get support for grants to fund this project. We got student support from the University of Houston Provost Office, the Cougar Initiative to Engage, from Dean Antonio Tillis and the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. We got transcription and program support from the Center for History and Culture of Southeast Texas and the Upper Gulf Coast, Humanities Texas, Southern Jewish Historical Society, and the Texas Jewish Historical Society. We also received production funding for the magazine, both design and printing, from the Summerlee Foundation. Here's my contact information at UH, my email and my phone number, also the websites for the magazine and the Documenting Hurricane Harvey project. If you have any questions at all at any time, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions about specifics of how we made things happen or about the interviews themselves. In the meantime, I hope you will all stay safe and stay well, and I look forward to answering your questions now. Thank you.